As I'm wheeling my way through the Burn Valley, scene of the incident that changed my life, I'm surprisingly happy. It's a beautiful mellow autumn day and I'm still here. I have osteopetrosis, which means multiple fractures and visual impairments. And on reflection, I think I've had a wheelchair chasing me all my life. I'm Karen Sheeder. I write songs, make films and run drama projects about disability. I don't really recall the moment that I fell in. This would have all been maybe muddy, and the fact that I'd had some red wine as well made me unsteady on my feet, and I assume I must have just slid down, but the only memory I have of it is of actually being in the beck rather than of actually falling in. I know now that I was dying of hypothermia having been in the water so long, but apparently I told the ambulance crew, just leave me here, I'll be alright. I had no idea then how long I'd have to stay in hospital. I had an x-ray done yesterday, and it was like a fortnight since I've been in this contraption, and I wanted to see if there was any like healing of the bone taking place, and these two doctors came and swiped me x-rays last night and had a look at them. They were like really kind of gloomy and said that there wasn't any healing taking place at all, and it wasn't, you know, in a particularly good position. They said, and obviously with your bones, the healing's going to take a lot longer. So I was devastated really, because that like went against, you know, what I'd been told a fortnight earlier. So in my mind I had things like, you know, well, fuck it then, you know, like I'm not gonna stay, you know, like I'll just take the sticks in the wheelchair and leave, you know, because I'm not going to stay here for 3 months with no guarantee of like nothing happening, you know. I'd rather just get on with my life on those terms, you know. They've ordered this kind of horrible caliber contraption thing which I'm supposed to wear, which allows me to put some weight on that leg so I can walk, albeit using crutches, and then they sort of let me go home and see, you know, if the healing takes place. She said that I won't be able to put any weight on this leg for 6 months.
So you'll be in a manual wheelchair then?
Or a power chair, yeah.
Right. How long have you been here already? 3 weeks?
It'll be 4 weeks on Monday.
4 weeks on Monday.
Conflicting opinions and the hospital atmosphere were starting to get to me.
What have been the kind of, you know, the highs and lows of that period then, do you think?
So I can't really think of any highs. But mainly just like when you see it stretching earlier, like indefinitely, and you're hearing the same voices and you're hearing the same conversations and professional bonhomie.
Right, from nurses.
The nurses that actually
what sort of phrases?
Crusting,
what sort of phrases are you thinking?
Lift your bot.
Oh, these are quite revealing anymore.
Do you want to do your bits? Somebody came over to me and said, are you winning, Karen? And I said, no. And she said, why aren't you winning? And I said, because I've got a £10 weight sort of attaching me to this bed. And she said, oh, well, the reason for that is because the doctors went. I said, I know why I've got it on. I said, it's just not what we would construe as winning, is it? I felt a bit rotten, but, you know, they come in at like 6 o'clock in the morning and they're going, right, then, everybody, time for your tablets. And you just want to kill them. One thing which came crashing in on me while I lay in casualty that night was, will we still get to Moscow? I run a disability film project, Shoot Your Mouth Off, and one of our films had been selected for screening at the second Moscow Disability Film Festival. Myself and Derek Matthews from Carpet Films were meant to be attending the festival in November. Released from hospital at the very end of October, I soon realised how difficult it was going to be to get around, particularly as my elbow was fractured too. And if it was this difficult here, how hard would it be in Moscow? As we travelled towards Newcastle Airport, the unreality of the situation kept pinging into my mind. Last week I was institutionalised after 9 weeks in hospital, and now I'm flying to Moscow with lots of inappropriate advice.
Be careful what bars you go into in Moscow.
Exactly. first flight nerves were beginning to kick in. Are you wearing a label on your luggage?
No. Have you?
Well, mine says Mrs. M. Baldwin. The case belongs to me mum.
How are you going to prove it though?
It's me mum, honest. The check-in desk rose up huge in front of me and I had to balance on one wobbly leg to talk to the attendant. I wasn't really used to standing at that point and felt at any minute that I might topple over. Would a lowered counter be out of the question? As the attendant stuck labels on my wheelchair, it was hard not to feel she was sticking them on me too. Oh, sure, that down.
Yeah, you're all labelled up.
Unlabelled. Nothing to do now but wait. I love airports and stations, the bustle and anonymity. It struck me then that independent travel was going to need far more planning than I had ever been used to. Despite being visually impaired, I had no problems getting around in the past to conferences and festivals. I've always enjoyed travelling alone and hoped I would be able to do so again, but for now, Derek's presence was reassuring. For both of us, it was our first long flight. I don't know if I'm excited, but I don't know whether I should be apprehensive as well. Just, you know, you hear about like people having like horrendous flights and turbulence and all that kind of thing, and then there's the ever-present threat of terrorism to consider. But no, mainly I'm excited, and I think it's going to be exhilarating, at least taking off. So it would have been really good to have had a power chair saved on my arms and my elbow and stuff like that, but I was thinking that it would be probably, there wouldn't be many vehicles in Ocean that would accommodate them, you know, like I have loads of yellow cabs and that in cities in England. It doesn't seem to me as though, from what I've read, that there's that sort of facility. I was reading some stuff on the internet today about you know, there are limited drop cabs and like accessible buildings and stuff in Moscow. So we might find that it's a bit of an uphill struggle when we get there. Suddenly the wait was over. I was finally going to go through that special assistance gate. As we were passing through each stage of the boarding process, the sense of there being no way back grew stronger. All my life I'd wanted to fly, but I never imagined it would be in such strange circumstances. Most people had been supportive of my decision to go to Moscow with a broken leg. One or two had cast doubts as to the wisdom of it. What if they were right? What if something went wrong? I'd wondered all along how they would get me on the plane. To experienced disabled travellers, this must seem incredibly naive, but everything to me was new and exciting. Did the other disabled passengers who we were collecting feel the same trepidation, or were they old hands? A similar sense of my fate being out of my hands had overwhelmed me during my stay in hospital, and it didn't feel all that comfortable. We had taken the precaution of copying our passport and visa details and placing the copies in our luggage, but still I clutched my bag, which held the originals, as if somebody might be about to run off with it. I was about to set foot, or crutch, on a plane for the first time, albeit only a KLM City Hopper, little more than an Airbus, and I was buzzing.
Welcome to the plane.
Click every tourist.
Life jacket is kept under your seat. If you're instructed to put it on, place the life jacket over your head. Cross these tapes behind your back and then tie them in
Routine safety procedures? Fascinating.
under the jacket. Do not obey the jacket if you are outside the aircraft. This will let you
And the takeoff was all I hoped it would be. We flew through the sunrise and I congratulated myself that everything was going according to plan. We even got our vegetarian meal as ordered. So far so good. The luggage has gone missing, wasn't on the conveyor belt when we got off the plane. And we were told that it'll probably turn up at the hotel, but we don't actually know that for definite. Most of our entire wardrobes are in it, so it's a bit of a nerve-wracking experience we're having. And not many people speak English. We tried to be philosophical.
I mean, it's not the end of the world losing our baggage, but...
No, but it puts a bit of a dampener on things, especially when one of the things you want to do when you go to a new place, like go to a hotel and get washed and put clean clothes on and stuff, isn't it? You know, it's part of the...
it is.
Part of the thing. Our volunteer driver, Yanetta, spoke no English and we knew no Russian. Could Killiquewa cross the language barrier? Was Moscow all neon signs and hoardings? At the aptly named Marriott Grand Hotel, we met some of the other delegates, David, Sharon, David too, and Bruce, all of whom were from America. For the first time since we arrived the night before, we saw some other disabled people and could chat to them in English. We discovered that not only was the Marriott the most luxurious hotel in Moscow, it was the only truly accessible one, which was why we were all staying there. We were to discover that, despite the beauty of our surroundings, it had its drawbacks. If we were in danger of developing delusions of grandeur, the festival bus instantly dispelled them. Access via an ancient hoist, we were never clamped in, strapped in, or even stuck down with blue tack at any stage of our journey. There was a great sense of camaraderie developing already between the Marriott contingent, as we shared our experiences, both good and bad. I was becoming aware that the Moscow traffic was erratic and largely undirected. Perhaps that explained the presence of religious icons on the bus. We would reach the Salute Cinema, the festival venue, with the help of God and Providence. Or maybe Bruce had less faith.
They've asked, you need to stay on the bus until your luggage arrives.
That's not funny. So this was the place where Killiquewa would be screened to its most diverse audience yet. People from all over the world with all kinds of impairments were gathered for this festival, a fact which had clearly excited a lot of media interest. I was beginning to realise that disabled people had minimal visibility in Russia, and I wondered if the media frenzy was part of a publicity drive orchestrated by Perspektiva, the festival organisers, and in particular its director, Denise Rosa. I could have sworn that she was American when I spoke to her on the phone, but she was speaking fluent Russian. I began to wonder for the first time whether Killiquewa might have a chance of winning one of the awards that was proudly displayed to us, and if we did, would it survive the KLM treatment? As the festival got underway, I wondered if our journey would turn out to be worthwhile. What criteria were applied to the selection process, and would we come home feeling that there had been no real quality bar and no real desire to push the boundaries of disability film? First up, La Terre est ronde, a French film which clearly showed the universal fear of learning disability. What if it's catching? Kinara from India, exploring the need for equal access and opportunities for everybody. It was already becoming apparent that the questions and issues being raised were engrossing the audience, and as the films continued to celebrate our identity, talents and worth as disabled people, I began to feel really proud to be part of the lineup. The films were being translated into various languages as they were screened, but the equipment was sometimes erratic. It was something of a relief, therefore, when a US film, King Gimp, was shown. The story of an artist with cerebral palsy tracing his life from childhood to maturity.
I'd never done anything like this before, and I came over and found Dan listening to his music at 10 volume and moving around and jumping around this room. And I said, Laura, what did you do? Why did you get yourself involved in this? I couldn't understand a word he said, and he was babbling on, and his mom was understanding everything.
Honestly. One.
Measure for costumes. You want to get your script and then be the first to be measured over here?
46, thank you. Relax.
It's kind of long one for the philosophy after my last surgery. It's got part here, so this right cheek's like twice the size of the left.
Okay.
So if we can kind of hide that too.
I'd found a role model who'd started me on a search into the past. And I discovered that throughout history, disabled people had been working as entertainers.
And then Matt Fraser in Born Freak. It was strange hearing Matt's familiar voice in this context, and interesting to see how he had extended the idea from his one-man show, Seal Boy Freak, into a full-length, in-depth and polished TV documentary.
There were some people who were termed monsters, but I suppose they were...
As we drove back through the neon-lit streets, I couldn't help but wonder how our film would fare in the context of what we'd seen so far.
So how are you enjoying this trip so far then, Karen?
I really am, although it's more a case of enjoying it because it's different to what I expected and like discovering new things. But some of the frustrations and drawbacks that we've encountered are unbelievable. The lack of access for disabled people and feeling that I'm the only disabled person on the streets of the Moscow centre because there's nobody else out, and you can see why. Even going for such a simple thing, we would consider a simple thing as going out for a meal, is fraught with difficulties because the steps are high. There are doormen who stand there and watch you struggle and watch the person who's pushing you wrestle with the door. That aside, I think it's a valuable experience because you can realise how lucky you are to live in England, where although it's far from ideal, it's actually getting there, and people are in fear of being, having legislation used against them when they don't have services and facilities in place. There's no such thing as a DDA in Moscow, and it looks like there won't be one for centuries to come. I can't really quite believe what I've seen tonight, so I'm going to go back out tomorrow and have a look at it. More evidence of the extensive media coverage of the Moscow Disability Film Festival. It was an extensive article, plus the complete programme, including, I noticed with a bit of a jolt, the section Killer Q was in, and my own question and answer session, Disability and Humour. We'd spent the whole of the previous day at the festival, so we decided to spend the second day exploring. Leaving behind the warmth and opulence of the hotel, we set off into a bitterly cold November day. 8 lanes of dusty old cars that would look more at home in a scrapyard teemed along Tverskaya Street. The prevalence of exhaust fumes in the air suggested that nobody worried too much about emissions. The height of each curb we negotiated meant that getting to Red Square would definitely be a test of strength and guile, and once or twice it looked like we might fail. Derek and I were both on a steep learning curve when it came to using a wheelchair as either a pusher or a passenger. Wonder what it's like to do it myself. What would this be like if you had to do it by yourself? I didn't know which was more scary, being perilously tipped forward into the road by somebody behind me, or veering off down an incline under my own feeble efforts. Is this a pedestrian crossing or just a bit of stripy road? Before we did battle with the gargantuan yoghurt truck, there was another small cliff to negotiate.
Keep tight hold up, as it will be quite bumpy.
Okay. Another one of these. Totally accessible zebra crossings. Past the van and on the outside into the traffic. And up another mountainous curb. What's it like? Like, is it really hard work?
It's getting it up the really tall curbs is because when you're standing on the curb and you're beneath the curb, sometimes often 8 or 9 inches down beneath, I have to bend to lift you. I have to bend me back to lift you.
Yeah.
Which is not the ideal way to lift at all. So often I have to try and get down onto the curb with you and then try and do a frantic little climb up it while you're mounting the curb with me.
Yeah.
So
imagine
not
doing
very
that
easy.
Every day of your life.
Yeah. That's why there's nobody out on the street that I've seen since we've arrived that isn't getting into a cab, possibly in a wheelchair. The guy, when we were leaving the Marriott Hotel, he actually said, "Are you getting the taxi?" and then gave us a really strange look when
like
when
you're
I said
fully
no,
going to brave the
yes.
the streets. Yeah.
So let's hope we've got more about us than that.
Well, the way to get across these roads that are absolutely teeming with traffic is to negotiate one of these subways behind me. As you can see, it's got a huge step and then there's a flight of steps down underneath the road. It means we're going to have to take our chances dashing across several lanes of speeding traffic. Wish us luck. We're over the road from the Kremlin and having defied the sceptical hotel staff who didn't think we could make it, we're here, except that there's a barrier over the road and I don't know how we're going to get across to the other side, but we made it this far. Well, just as we dashed across 8 lanes of mad traffic, it started to snow. We have managed to find one ramp to get us closer to the Kremlin, but I don't know how close I'll be able to get in a wheelchair. It's an adventure. It seems to be immensely significant that we're at the cenotaph to honour Russian war dead, and there's no way up for disabled soldiers who perhaps may have had their legs blown off at one of their dead comrades. The sight of the eternal flame buffeted by the wind seemed to make me feel even colder. It appeared to me a harsh, hostile environment, probably because the scale of it was overwhelming from my vantage point, though I was slowly becoming used to seeing things from the perspective of a wheelchair user.
Well, we're on about a 2 in 5 gradient or something like that, and it's taken quite a lot of brawn to get you up here.
I know, but it's the mecca of our pilgrimage, isn't it?
Well, the sight up ahead I think will be worth seeing. It does look absolutely stunning.
Red Square is absolutely beautiful. but the whole thing is paved in cobbles, and maybe they should consider replacing it all with a tactile surface. I had dimly registered the extraordinary phenomenon of St Basil's Cathedral out of the corner of my eye, but was subconsciously avoiding looking at it until I could see it properly to get its full impact. It made me wish all buildings were like that, though I bet the access is crap. Derek had told me that when he was a kid, before the end of the Cold War, he played a computer game called Raid Over Moscow, in which he shot at bits of this beautiful cathedral that stands like a Disney funhouse in the stern grey surroundings of Red Square. It's a culture shock to those of us who remember those times to see people strolling casually around taking photos and hearing a multitude of languages being spoken and remembering how the Kremlin and Red Square used to be symbols of the bleak, harsh regime that existed behind the Iron Curtain. Although the tourist trade hasn't yet turned Red Square into the equivalent of tourist traps in London, the signs of commercialisation were everywhere. It's a certainty that the tourist trade would develop far more quickly than facilities which would allow Russia's 17 million disabled people to partake in their own country's culture. We knew from speaking to some of the volunteers who helped out at the festival that wages in Russia were very low, and most of the items here would be way out of reach for most people, even if they wanted them. How many hours would these women spend gathering cents before they could afford a Tiffany lamp? The custom of standing on this spot, the dead centre of Moscow, and throwing coins over your shoulder is apparently fairly new, but obviously appreciated by its beneficiaries. By now I was freezing and becoming mightily hacked off that the little unit of Derek and me in the wheelchair seemed to be invisible.
I use a wheelchair, I don't walk.
A Russian Bible. What other delights did this lovely hotel have to offer?
I want to know where we get undressed.
In your room?
In our room.
In the health club.
Or in the health club.
We'll give you a locker.
Right, we get a locker.
Yes.
Okay then. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye.
He said, if you live in our hotel, swimming pool, jacuzzi, saunas and whirlpool open 24 hours a day.
When I looked on the Marriott Grand Hotel website and I saw the image of this fountain and how beautiful the place looked, I thought it would be a fantastically luxurious place to stay when we came to Moscow, and this is why we're staying here. But what it is in practice is a big, beautiful cage in which you can't really survive on the kind of money that we've got. For example, now we've got used to the currency, we realise that we've paid something like £3.36 per cup of coffee that we've had here, and for omelette and chips twice, I think it cost us about 50 quid. It was the first time I'd been near so much water since I fell in the beck. And it was a good deal warmer and more pleasant. Great to see the Mitchell family in there too, and somewhat surreal to be discussing disability politics with a family from Chicago in a jacuzzi in Moscow. Back at the festival, David Roche was performing.
I was too nice.
Слишком я уж был милым.
Because disabled people have to be tough.
It was a chance to discover whether humour related to disability could transcend the language barrier.
That's why I belong to a gang. My gang is all the facially disfigured guys in the movies and show business like me.
On the whole, the audience seemed a good-natured but rather serious bunch.
Spain, monster.
The Hunchback of Notre Dame.
And I was beginning to feel a bit apprehensive about the reception for Kill a Cure and my own question and answer session following its screening.
Yeah, those are my gang members.
Did the woman from Baker's Oven call you? Right, because she phoned me.
We'd been away for 3 days by now, and I was missing my kids. They'd been envious of our trip, and I know they would have loved to have been there. When I saw the Mitchells with their children, I wished I could have afforded to bring mine too.
She probably shit herself when she realises how much it's cost her. Yes. We've been to Red Square in the Kremlin today. Over there. Oh.
On the Saturday, Perspektiva organised a guided tour for some of the festival's delegates. Back on the Sunshine bus, we picked up Olga, our guide, who was a professor at Moscow State University, and set off to discover more about this city that I'd found so alien the day before. A recurring and distressing thought kept coming to me that behind the walls and windows of the sometimes beautiful buildings were trapped thousands of disabled people who simply couldn't get out to be part of everyday life. I read that sometimes the Russian social services departments couldn't afford to supply wheelchairs to disabled people. And this contrasted sharply with my own experience in England. I'd been in hospital for 9 weeks, and for about 6 of those, the wheelchair was waiting for me at the end of my bed. If I'd broken my leg so drastically and I lived here, would I have been taken home on my release from hospital and simply left to rot? And even if you have a wheelchair, the city isn't built to accommodate you. I think I knew then that unless some way is found of fixing my leg, I won't come back. There was a brief opportunity to talk about how we would run the panel discussion on humour and disability before this section of the festival began. Alexei, one of the translators, had become indispensable, both during the films and more informally when we were mixing with the other audience members. His ability to listen and translate simultaneously was remarkable.
I also would like to say that our kids doesn't self-image and they don't feel themselves underprivileged.
David Roach and I both agreed that we didn't really suffer from stage fright before a performance. I wondered whether this was because, as disabled people, we're always conspicuous, except in Moscow, and therefore are accustomed to being the focus of attention. This section featured a French film, The Joy, in which a guy with cerebral palsy is trying unsuccessfully to shoot himself. It was excellent, as was Playmates, also from France, about a disabled man being picked up in a pavement cafe.
Merci. T'es son infirmière?
Non, c'est mon copain.
Tu rigoles, c'est ton mec?
Ça gêne?
Ah non, du tout. C'est pas ce que je voulais dire.
Oui, sur le coup du mec. On bouge. C'est pour moi.
Then Kill a Cure, with Russian subtitles.
What are you saying?
Oh, you're dribbling again.
I tried to gauge the audience response, and it seemed that they were engrossed, though the laughter appeared a little hesitant. Would they be offended by our treatment of religious icons?
I've got a question for people before I take any questions. Does anybody here know who Glenn Holland is?
У меня к вам вопрос, впрочем, есть до того, как вы начнете задавать свои вопросы. Слышал ли кто-нибудь такое имя, фамилия Глен Ходл? Знает ли кто-нибудь, кто он такой? Obviously.
Right, okay. Glenn Hoddle was the England football team manager in 1999.
In the ensuing discussion, it emerged that the reaction was very mixed. One person said she found it depressing, and somebody asked why there had to be so much blood. But some people loved it and felt that the chains and steps were representative of obstacles they encountered in their own lives.
Sounds very well.
Well, we've just been told that the bus is going to be coming in about half an hour to take us to the festival's awards ceremony. But really, whichever film wins, they've all been absolutely excellent. It's been rewarding enough just to be here and experience the reaction to our film from the Russians. We've just arrived at venue for the awards ceremony for the film festival. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps up into the building. Don't know whether they're going to come and arrange some sort of temporary ramp. Ah, thank heavens, the ramps have arrived. Apparently brand new and never been used. I'm just going to see if they work.
This possibility had never entered our heads. How could they stage the awards ceremony of a disability film festival here? Why did nobody know how to use the ramps? Would we even get in?
This venue's filling up with disabled people who are here for the awards ceremony for the Disability Film Festival. Just a great buzz about the place, providing everybody can get into the building. David's in, but he's not in his own chair. He's had to go into a manual chair because he couldn't get his power chair up the ramp.
This place was again teeming with TV crew, and I wondered if it would have been more valuable for them to have been outside filming our heroic attempts to get in.
There's our little friend who thought the film was too bloody.
I know, yeah.
This place felt more like a Western arts venue than any we'd been in thus far. The bar, however, seemed to have been designed with full attention to Moscow's policy on access, which apparently is, let's make everything as difficult as possible for these disabled folks. Or maybe they don't get many of us in, so think that access isn't an issue.
2 at a time even.
Look at this crowd. What if there was a fire and there's only a 2-man lift? And it's occurred to me at points throughout the festival where there's been loads of wheelchairs and little space to get in and out of the building. If there was a bomb or anything that went off, we'd all fry.
I don't want to preempt your speech here, David, but if this is what you're writing, I think I should cover it.
Okay. Down in the basement cinema, the excitement was mounting.
There are many kinds of laughter. There is laughter of the brain, puns, clever, wordplay. There is laughter of the spleen, it is bitter. Laughter of the bladder, where you laugh till you wet your pants. And there is laughter of the soul. Over the last 4 days, we have tasted all of those kinds of laughter.
David Mitchell was now a huge Killer Cure fan and was rooting for us to win an award, but I was trying not to hope too hard.
And I am honored to present the award for Best Comedy Film this evening.
Next to me, David was chanting softly, "Killer Cure, Killer Cure," and despite myself, I began to feel excited.
The award for Best comedy film.
Приз лучшему комедийному фильму достается
Gregor's Greatest Invention by Johannes Kiefer.
The overall festival winner, picked by an independent jury, was a nice, warm-hearted, safe film with disabled kids in. How could we compete? There was a pleasing outcome for David and Sharon though.
Well, I would really like to congratulate you, Sharon and David, on winning the Best Documentary Award at the Moscow Second International Disability Film Festival. To you!
Cheers.
Cheers.
It was well deserved.
We ended the night feeling we'd made some new friends.
Don't ask what we paid the judges. Don't ask how if we know the judges.
At Moscow Airport, on our way home, I was happy but knackered. We'd learned that Killer Cure had split the audience and provoked debate, which is a good place to be. I had defied the odds and some scepticism about my ability to make the trip just a week after leaving hospital with my leg still broken. Derek and I had seen a Shoot Your Mouth Off production in an entirely new context, and also done battle with Moscow's unforgiving environment. I couldn't have managed without his willingness to take on the challenge with me with enthusiasm and humour. Now there was just the rest of my life to tackle.